Glad to be here, Reed. Glad to be here.
Awesome. Well, Rick, tell us about your background. What's brought you to Digi Docs today?
Well, that's somewhat of a long story, but Digi Docs was basically came from an idea that I had back a few years back. I was in the revenue recovery business, working with medical providers to help them recover revenues on written off cases involving workers' compensation claims. And one of the initial things that I would do is when I would go into these healthcare provider practices, I would ask to see their contracts. I need to see your contracts. I need to understand what networks you're involved with so that we can make a determination if you have recoverable monies. When I asked that simple question of I need to see your contracts, the looks that I got, the excuses that I received, it was everything from we lost them, we can't find them, we're not in any network. The previous practice manager took them with them when they left. And it just didn't make any sense to me as an outside provider to be able to provide this analysis without having the information. It's a pretty simple concept. And I would go to these practices and I would say, okay, you say you don't have this information, provide me your tax ID information so I can contact these networks. And I would go back with these providers and provide them just stacks of contracts that they had no idea that they had gotten in, or they had gotten in and forgotten, or somebody left, or the contract got lost, and there was no way to track if they were properly being reimbursed. So that's kind of how the idea of Digi Docs started, is I just simply kept saying, there's just got to be an easier way to do this.
Well, I love that because as we talked about before, really every entrepreneur should start with that statement of there's got to be a better way. And so many businesses have started that way of saying there has to be a better way to do this, right? And that's what entrepreneurs do. We find problems that we can solve for money, right? At a very, very basic level, right?
Yes.
That's oversimplifying things way too much, but that's where the ideas begin.
Sure.
So I like to hear that. Yeah, that's how things started for you as well.
Oh yeah, and it was prior to going into the revenue recovery business, which I was in for 15 years before developing Digi Docs, I had a case management business, and it was the same thing. You would go in and you would ask for documentation, or you would ask for information, and it's just missing. And I'm pretty entrepreneurial. I've owned other businesses in the past, and I would just look at people and go, how can you run a business? Simply, how can you run a business if you can't access information? And it's almost laughable. And I would sit down and I would talk to people, and they would go, Rick, you just don't understand. You don't understand what happens. And it's like, good gracious. So the idea was there's just got to be a better way. And it takes some time and some development. You have to keep at it. Not everything is a success. It just takes time. And you just keep moving forward.
Yeah, that's well said. That's like the part 2 of the entrepreneurial journey, which is usually a very long process. And it's not always a pre-launch or a pre-revenue process, right? Sometimes
Correct.
we roll something out and it's a beta, to use tech industry terms for those of you who are watching this, and that term's not familiar. A lot of times companies, when they have a product or a service that's perhaps, it's not in its final form yet, but it's being rolled out to the marketplace, usually at a lower cost than they expect to have it eventually, and with the disclaimer that it may have some bugs, and they use that as an opportunity to gather feedback, get some data, make improvements from an iterative process to make the final version, sometimes called the alpha. The other thing that people refer to that beta is an MVP, a minimum viable product. So just a little bit of education for those of you that may not be familiar with those terms. But yeah, that process can take a long time before the product is finished.
Correct. And even my product, Digi Docs, is not a finished product. is an ongoing evolutionary product. When I had this idea, one of the first things I went to the practice managers and billing managers and CEOs of the different practices that I work with in the revenue recovery. And I simply said, what causes you pain? What's your problem? Where are your bottlenecks? And I would present this idea to them. And we'd even go on and, started doing some layouts and looking at the software and everything. And I would constantly ask for feedback. And what we did was we had one prototype. We began, sending it out there and having people take a look at it. And a lot of the information was, hey, Rick, this makes sense. Or no, Rick, this doesn't make sense to me. And we simply got to the point where it was just ingrained in me. Keep it simple. Keep it simple, keep it simple, keep it simple. That's what people want to see. They don't want excessive clicking. They don't want a lot of noise. They don't want to spend tons of time. So when I really started focusing the development of Digi Docs, we came up with a simple acronym. It's called SAFE. Okay. And the whole idea is our application has to be secure, it has to be accessible, it has to be fast, and it has to be easy. And then the little side to that is no excessive clicking. So when we started the development of the application, my head engineer and even the development team, I would tell them, if we've got to click more than 3 or 4 times to get information, there's a problem. Because people don't want to waste time. And the whole idea of Digi Docs is making it simple to access your information, any device, any place, anywhere, any platform, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, whatever you need, Android, Apple, the whole bit. But it's just got to meet that standard of being safe. And we preach every single day.
So that's so good. I have to really highlight a couple of points for you guys who are watching this. So Rick gave 2 really key things. So the first thing he did is he just went to his customers and he started asking them what they needed, right? That is
correct.
The best form of market research. Go to your customers or your potential customers and say, hey, what do you need, right? The second thing is keeping it simple. And I would even adjust that to say keeping it essential, right? I heard
Correct.
a designer friend of mine say this, and I'm sure this was a borrowed quote, but they said that perfection is not achieved when nothing more can be added, but perfection is achieved when nothing more can be taken away, right? So you have this purely minimalist, essential product where it solves the problem, it has its use, and it doesn't have any excess, because excess is seen as a waste. It's non-essential, and it devalues the product or the service as a whole. So keeping it essential, especially early on, is really critical. So I really appreciate that insight, Rick. That's gold.
I appreciate that. Well, and one of the things, there's lots of good software out there. There's a lot of good document management software. We're a little different on our focus and how we operate our business. But I have a good friend of mine who is a billing manager for an orthopedic medical practice. And they went to a very large system that incorporates a lot of what Digi Docs does. And she actually had to go in and make an adjustment on a medical file. And it took her 37 clicks to get to the information. She actually developed carpal tunnel syndrome because of this solution that's supposed to help her actually made it worse. And it actually caused carpal tunnel. And I scratch my head and I go, this just doesn't make sense to me. And so I constantly, when I go back to my clients and people that I'm networking with, I constantly ask them questions, and I constantly evaluate my role in Digi Docs. As the founder of Digi Docs, I don't have all the answers. I don't pretend to have all the answers, but I'm smart enough to know to ask the questions. And I take that information and I come back to my team, and we constantly evaluate if we're making the right progress, if we're making the right procedures, if we're following the right steps, so that we can develop a product that will be able to scale and meets the needs of industry. Like I said, I work in the healthcare provider market because when I was doing the revenue recovery and even in the casework industry, that's what I knew. But what we're finding out is our application has the ability to be applied to all kinds of industries. If you're dependent on paper, then you need Digi Docs. And considering the current situation that we're having with the healthcare crisis in this country, even more, it's a no-touch solution.
So another couple of things that I really want to highlight there. You made a statement and you said that it's not that you're so smart that you know the answers, but you're smart enough to know the questions.
Correct.
Right? That is something that I'm going to add. I'm seeing all these highlights from this conversation. They're so good, right? And I would say that's true of all intelligent people, right? They didn't necessarily just gather a lot of information to then be able to regurgitate, but they learned how to ask the right questions. And I think that's a skill that gets honed over time, because then what you're able to do is you're able to look at a situation and say and then ask the right question about that situation to get an answer that actually either serves the marketplace or serves the team. And I think the best application of this, or the best real world test of this, is what you mentioned, this COVID-19 crisis. It's the elephant in the room. We have to talk about it. It's why we're both having this conversation from our home offices. And certainly as it affects the medical field, I imagine that you guys are either more in demand or perhaps more under strain than you have been. What's life been like in the last, several weeks or a couple months for you guys?
Well, realistically, our healthcare provider clients are in crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I actually made the conscious decision to stop marketing and selling our product right now. I simply follow up with our clients. Is there anything I can do? What's going on? I'll tell them a silly story or something that I read or saw or whatever, just to give them a break. I'm not here at this time to sell them a product or to say you need to add this additional module that we're adding to our application. Simply being there to be supportive. That's it. What I'm anticipating is that as we move out of this crisis, then yes, Digi Docs will become more in demand. That's the plan. That's my thinking. That's my goal. Not to put pressure on anybody right now. Let it know we're around. We're here to help you. Just check on you, make sure you're okay. I have clients that are saying, Rick, I'm running around trying to find masks, or I'm running around trying to find medical supplies. Okay, well, is there anything that I can do? Or, hey, I was talking to somebody the other day, and they had some luck going this route to get information or get supplies. Look at, you may want to look. Thanks very much. It could be as simple as just a simple text. Hey, just thinking about you. Want to make sure you and your family are safe and secure and everything's going well. The responses that I get are, you made my day. Thank you.
Yeah. And I've, especially in a highly sensitive industry like the one you serve, that healthcare provider world, it's you have to be. It's a challenge in all industries, right? Like, what's the right way to approach your market in this current time? You can't do nothing, right? We can't sit back and do nothing.
Correct.
That's the worst thing. Overselling can come across as insensitive.
Correct.
Not reaching out at all seems like a missed opportunity. So the default, or not the default, but the best that I've seen done, if it isn't wise to be in sales mode, is exactly what you described, which is just being a resource, right? This is now we're moving to sales 101, right? And it's be useful to your market. That doesn't always mean be there to sell them something.
Correct.
I think you're mindset is right, that when things do settle down, it's going to be Rick who checked in and who reached out and who offered to help and who made a connection for us that was useful at the time or whatever it is. Now I think we do need to, I'm thinking about what he was talking to us about, months before this, and I'd like to bring them back in, or I'd like to look at his solution, or you know what, let's just go with Rick because he's awesome and he really helped us, or their team was really supportive of us when we needed them. And so that's a wise move, I think. So you guys, have y'all been, there we go. I dropped the Southern.
That's
Southern
okay.
y'all. Have you guys been operating remotely before this, or did you have to shift after this started?
Well, primarily because primarily we're remote 24/7. Okay, prior to this healthcare crisis, because when it comes to loading documents and securing physical documents and stuff, we either go to practices and scan in their documents so we can set up their modules for them. Other times they send them to us, but we don't have a big office space, so everybody's remote. My lead designer is here in Richmond. One of my account representatives is here in Richmond. I use independent contractors for outside sales outside of the Richmond area. They're all remote as well. So from that standpoint, I've worked remote for years, so I kind of like it. And the fact that, and I don't have that overhead, so the money that I save in overhead goes to salary and benefits.
Right.
I'm a pretty simple guy, and I believe in making sure that my employees are happy and have their needs met, and they don't have to stress about what's coming tomorrow.
Well, that's really, I think that's a leadership quality that that not all have shown during this crisis, right? Is prioritizing, and I understand that there are difficult decisions that have to be made, and that some industries and some businesses are facing that others aren't. I, like you, have been able to operate remotely for a while, so this has been less disruptive for me. But being sensitive to those that it has disrupted quite a lot, I've been impressed by those who have prioritized the health and safety of their teams, and so it's good to hear that you've done that as well. So what does the future look like for Digi Docs and your team? What do you guys? I understand that the future is hard to see right now,
Yeah, exactly.
But let's assume that there's something like a normal life that resumes in a few months, hopefully. What do things look like for you guys?
Well, for Digi Docs, it's scalability. We've got to be able to scale the business. We want to look at other verticals because we think that our design makes our application applicable to other industries. So the idea is, right now we're in Virginia, we're doing a little bit in Maryland. We want to stay in the Southeast, but then we want to move into North Carolina, South Carolina, grow the business. And if I had my dream, we would become a product that's viewed as a national product. Now that's going to take time. It's going to take a lot of time. And, the way that we price our services, we make it affordable. We don't charge user fees and licensing fees and those types of things. So I think going forward, our messaging of simplicity, being a valuable resource, and not being overly expensive helps us. So the idea is to continue to grow the business in the healthcare sector, but looking at other verticals as we go forward.
Gotcha. And do you have a traditional sales team, and where you're driving leads to the sales team? And
a lot of it was based on, because I've been in the healthcare industry, a lot of it spins off of me right now. But the idea is, as we bring on more people, and then one of the things that I did was I developed independent sales contractor positions. And what I simply said is, if you work in an industry and you're a salesperson and You're looking to generate some extra revenues. I'm not asking you to do anything that's in conflict with your duties. But if you happen to be at a client or a practice and they're saying, you know, I can't find information or we can't find documents and stuff, here's the solution. And what I tell my independent contractors is simply, all you have to do is just provide the information, and then if they contact us and they become a client, I'll pay you a commission for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Asking you to do anything that's in conflict. But it's a win-win situation for Digi Docs, and it's a win-win situation for salespeople.
Gotcha. Yeah, and so I think that that idea of a win-win. I mean, there's our other gold nugget right there.
Mm-hmm.
Is that if, and this goes for, you know, your team, you as the business leader, but of course the customer, right? Is like, what is and this is a problem I see in a lot of businesses, is that incentives are misaligned internally. And thus you get these adverse outcomes. For example, I have done a lot of work in financial services, right? Where
Mm-hmm.
there's a large contingent of commission-based sales roles there. And if you see where perhaps there's a management structure that gets compensated a certain way, and sales, the structure below them, is compensated a way that is not perfectly aligned, then you
Mm-hmm.
have actions here that are in contrast with actions at a lower level. And then that can become complex and can create issues that takes focus away from making sure that the customer wins, right? And
Correct.
those are really difficult challenges to overcome. I mean, overhauling, especially if you've got a large team, overhauling a compensation plan, you know, mid-year, for example, can put a tremendous strain on the business. So being really thoughtful about that from the beginning and making sure that it is a process that can scale is critical. So when you talk about scale, when you talk about compensation, when you talk about win-win scenarios, I think that all is a really applicable and stuff that people really need to be considering.
I appreciate it. And one of the things that I stress all the time, and it actually was an idea that came from my son. He's an officer in the Army, and he's a military intelligence officer. And I was just talking to him one day, and he said, "Dad," he said, "think about it. DigiDocs really doesn't sell what they don't sell. Okay, what you do is you provide an access for people to be educated, and really what you're selling is knowledge."
Mm-hmm.
And I went, you know, that's a pretty good marketing idea. You know, because I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm here to educate you and provide you an access so that you can have greater knowledge to better manage your business.
That's good. Yeah, it's you're selling. I would even amend and say that you're selling. I love to think about things like this. I love to think about, you know, kind of the one sentence pitch line, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you know how it's a pain in the neck to get access to the documents you need in a timely manner. Well, we provide you a quicker, simpler access to the knowledge you need to make, you know, quality decisions, whatever that is.
Absolutely,
So,
absolutely correct.
and people get that they misunderstand, and this is a problem that a simple solution can fix, in my opinion, right? Is reframing the way you think about it, the way your son helped you do that. When you really get in the weeds, you can think about your business as the bits and bytes that it is on the back end, right? You can start to
Mm-hmm.
think about, well, we're a technology that does this, it processes this, and it has this feature and stuff like that. And me as the potential customer, it's just like, I'm thinking about squirrels and going to the beach and the lunch that I'm about to take, and because it's
Mm-hmm.
just like, don't care. But when you tell me what you do in a way that addresses something that bothers me or something that could help me a lot, then it's like, I don't care about the back end stuff. I don't care about
Right.
the process. I don't care about the bits and bytes. I want to know that you can help me solve my problem. So getting people to go through that process of just saying, what's in it for me, right? The with them So what?
Sure. And
What's in it for
yeah,
me?
exactly. And I have a good friend of mine who is a CFO of a very large medical practice. And he was one of the people that I spoke with often when I was developing this idea. And one day we were just talking over lunch, and I was showing him kind of the model and what one of the features of the module does. And he goes, Rick, you mean you're actually going to save me from having to get up and go to the file cabinet and find a contract and flip pages and read everything, or I can use Digi Docs. I can click on my document. I can pull it up. And one of the things that we developed in our application is we have the ability to simultaneously search 4 documents at one time.
Mm.
You could pull up a contract that you have and search that document. No longer are you flipping through paper. No longer are you looking for information. It's there within a few keystrokes. Because that's huge for me. That's absolutely huge for me. The time that it saves me. Plus, I have the information all the time, because we all know documents and paper get lost or get out. And our solution is just literally save you time, make things easier, make them more functional, and make them simple. And I know it sounds like I'm beating a dead horse.
Nope. It's so
fits
important.
Perfectly.
Yeah, I mean, it also fits that motif of just simple problem solving, right? Every time it just makes me think of my doctor. I've had the same doctor since I was, 12 years old, and he knows, my whole family, and so I've been going to him for years, and I'll probably never leave until he retires. But every time I go into his office, I get it gives me anxiety, not as a non-anxious person, because I look back at all the paper files he still keeps on each one of his patients, and just look at that and think, he's got a system, whatever. He's close to retirement. He's not changing for anybody, and he's a great doctor. But man, I just look at that and think, there's got to be a better way.
Well, and there is, and if you think about it, one of the things that medical practice, particularly, they have EMR systems, electronic medical systems. They all have them, or they switch them. There's a few that still, but they don't have a record system, an electronic record system for their business documents. And I simply go back to my accounts, or the people that I've known for years, and go, how can you run a successful business if you can't access information? It just it doesn't make sense to me. And I jokingly tell people, I don't have formal training business. I didn't go to business school. I don't have an MBA. What I have, believe it or not, is I have 2 degrees in special education. And one of the things that I learned was keep it simple, break it down, make it functional. I do that every single day. And it makes a difference for me. I admit, I didn't go to the Wharton School or all these fantastic business schools across the country. I'm just a guy who was out in the field, had an idea, saw problems, and began coming up with solutions. And I jokingly tell people all the time, in my family, you're an educator or you're an engineer, because that's my cousins, family members, educate. I'm a little bit of both. I see a problem, I build a solution, and I educate people. That's what I do.
I like that, and I can empathize. I didn't get a business degree either. I got a history and economics degree, and I keep trying to justify it. Best I can come up with is that it taught me how to find and synthesize information, and then utilize it in a useful way, right?
Correct.
So I can sympathize with that, but I love the idea of being an educator first, right? No matter what you do, I think that's something that can be in leadership and in sales and marketing highly applicable.
Yeah, and one of the things that I used to do, and when I was doing the revenue recovery, is even with Digi Docs, is sitting down and just having a conversation with somebody, and being relaxed, being able to tell a story. I always tell them stories about my grandkids or something silly that I've done, and you just see the stress go away, and you start this educational process. And then you can literally see people, the light bulbs go off. Oh, that makes sense. Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, I like that. And when I sit in meetings and I see people shaking their head, nodding, honestly, I know I've got you. I've got you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good.
I jokingly have told people I've actually done trainings where I've gotten standing ovations because they're like, Rick, this is the first time anybody made any sense to me.
That's so good. Well, Rick, this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate the process that you go through, and that you've gone through. One, to find a problem to solve, to test and iterate and get customer feedback on the product to create, and how you're rolling it out to people, and the messaging behind it. It's all great. It's all great lesson for folks in any industry, right? I think they can follow those steps. So where can people learn more about you and about Digi Docs?
The website, that's pretty easy. Digi Docs, and it's a hyphen, so it's DIGI-docs.com. That's the website. There's contact information, for how to get in contact with me. I don't mind emails. I don't mind phone calls. I like engaging in conversations. That's the way we can learn from each other. We're on LinkedIn as well. We'll start posting some more information as we continue to develop our product and move forward. But I tell people all the time, you want to get a hold of me, email me. It's very simple. Rick@digidocs.com. You want to know something about our services and what we do, just go to the website. And there, even that, we designed it so it's simple and easy to understand.
That's great. Well, I'll definitely leave links to all that in the comments. So folks, if you want to learn more about Digi Docs and if you want to get in touch with Rick, you can find that information in the comments, or if you're watching later on YouTube, or if you're listening to the podcast, the information will be down in the description and in the profile. Folks, thanks so much for watching today. If you have any feedback for us, please leave it in the comments. I'd love to know how you guys are, or if you guys are enjoying these interviews. It's really helpful to me. I want to gather that listener feedback as well. So thank you all so much. And thank you, Rick. And we'll see you all on the next interview.
All right. Thank you so much, Reed. Take care.